Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at a truly fascinating, grim, dark narrative that basically strips away every single thing we think we know about society, morality, and just our place in the universe. It's a deeply philosophical, honestly very Nietzschean fable called The Golden Cage and the Starfinder. And look, this isn't just some simple story. It's this profound look at the death of old values, the decay of the things we build, and the terrifying reality of total cosmic indifference. If you've ever found yourself questioning the sort of arbitrary rules that dictate our lives, the themes we're unpacking today are going to resonate with you on a massive scale. We're going to see exactly how societies crumble under their own illusions and how ultimate destruction might actually be the ultimate form of liberation. Now look at this quote. It perfectly captures the terrifying decay of a failing moral order, right? It's rotting right in front of our eyes, literally like an overripe fruit. The source material uses this brilliant, visceral metaphor of fruit fermenting into vinegar to describe the life cycle of human systems. You see, what starts out as something that nourishes and organizes us, well, it eventually stagnates. And when a moral or social order stagnates, it doesn't just sit there frozen in time, it actively spoils. This existential rot means that the values a society clings to, social status, rigid hierarchies, financial debts, they turn toxic. They lose whatever original purpose they had and become literally poisonous to the very people they were designed to protect. All right, moving into part one, the rot of imaginary value. We're going to start our fable by looking at the deeply flawed foundations of this dying world and the toxic illusions that are somehow still holding it together. So, the crucial point we need to get here is that the societal laws we blindly follow, they aren't cosmic truths. They're just fragile illusions we've all sort of collectively agreed to believe in. The text nails this by defining it as imaginary value. Just think about what people stress over every single day. Job titles, inherited laws, the crushing concept of debt. We treat these things as if they're as real and immovable as gravity. But if you look at it from a point of cynical, philosophical wisdom, they're completely arbitrary. We invent these concepts, we bake them into our language and our laws, and then we entirely forget that we just made them up. We end up spending our whole lives deeply distracted, assigning this massive worth to mere linguistic constructs, completely oblivious to the rot underneath. And these illusions act as golden cages. They give citizens this entirely false sense of security while completely hiding the terminal, existential rot that's eating away at everything. It's a beautifully grim image, isn't it? I mean, a cage made of gold is still, at the end of the day, a cage. The rigid identities and rules society hands us might make us feel safe, telling us exactly who we are, what we owe, but they completely restrict human potential. They trap the inhabitants of this fable in a dying system, blinding them to the fact that the very bars protecting them are exactly what's causing their societal suffocation. Which brings us to Section 2, Manifestations of Illusion. Let's see how this abstract idea actually translates into real-world tragedy for the people trapped inside these cages. This illustrates perfectly how the illusion of ownership and the illusion of identity both just collapse into absolute nothingness when they finally hit the harsh truth of the void. Take a look at these two parables from our sources. First, there's the parable of the gilded debt, where this wealthy merchant genuinely believes he owns the futures of other people through financial debt. And what happens? His precious scrolls of debt literally turn to black ash. Poof! The value of his entire life's work vanishes in a second. Then we have the parable of the nameless king, where a ruler demands total obedience just because of his birthright. But guess what? Cosmic reality doesn't care about birthrights. The wind does not recognize his crown. Both parables highlight that precise, terrifying moment the golden cage shatters, exposing these guys not as powerful masters or kings, but just as powerless men standing in front of a completely indifferent universe. Moving on to part 3, the Starfinder's cosmic indifference. Enter the Starfinder, who actually transitions from a cold observer on the mountaintop to a terrifying agent of chaos. He serves as the ultimate antithesis to all these fragile, dying human constructs. Now, to really understand the Starfinder's role here, we have to grasp cosmic nihilism. This is the universe's total, deafening lack of regard for our titles, our wealth, our morality, all of it. Cosmic nihilism is basically the realization that in the grand, infinite span of the cosmos, human events simply do not matter. The universe doesn't enforce our laws, it definitely doesn't respect our kings, and it sheds zero tears when our civilizations fall apart. This is the philosophical reality the Starfinder embodies. He isn't some comic book villain maliciously destroying worlds. No, he is the literal personification of this vast, uncaring void. So you see, the Starfinder operates not as a savior, but as a detached witness, an agent of chaos whose total indifference leaves the survivors completely on their own. He just watches from his mountain as these grand, arrogant civilizations collapse, viewing the whole thing as just a minor repetitive cycle in the rise and fall of worlds. There's no grand tragedy in his eyes, it's just the predictable decay of an overripe fruit. Notice how he offers absolutely zero comfort. He doesn't swoop in to become the new king. Actually, the very second the old world is erased, his focus snaps immediately to the next dying constellation. It's the ultimate expression of cosmic indifference. It's like the universe saying, you are not special, and your apocalypse is literally just one of millions in a vast, endless garden of decay. Just look at this stark contrast between the rigid, arrogant decay of human society on the left and the silent, unfeeling reality of the cosmos on the right. On one side, you have humans frantically enforcing their imaginary values. They're clinging for dear life to their golden cages and birthrights, while the entire system rots around them. And on the other side, you have the Starfinder's reality, a great silence, endless repetitive cycles, and eventually, a desolate field of black ash. And that ash is such a powerful symbol here. It's the great equalizer. It represents the absolute erasure of all that imaginary value we were just talking about. Which leads us to Section 4, the paradox of dark mercy. Okay, let's dive into what is easily the most mind-bending part of this entire fable, the idea that total annihilation can actually be a gift. I know it sounds crazy, but while cosmic indifference seems unimaginable cold, it's actually a dark mercy. Why? Because it completely destroys the golden cages that were restricting human potential. Think about it. If the universe actually cared about our arbitrary laws, it would enforce them forever. The king would always be king, the debtor would always be enslaved. But because the universe just fundamentally does not care, it eventually lets those oppressive, rotting systems collapse. So the Starfinder's arrival and the destruction that follows, it's terrifying for sure, but it is also a profound act of mercy. It forcibly cures the existential rot by just burning the entire system to the ground. And here we see that progression, this violent but necessary transition from rigid decay to a state of chaotic rebirth. First, stagnation. The sweetness ferments into vinegar. Then the catalyst, the Starfinder, who arrives to witness the inevitable collapse. Through that collapse, the golden cages are entirely erased. Every debt is wiped clean, every crown is rendered meaningless. Which drops us right at step 4. A blank slate of ash. But, and this is crucial, from this total destruction, the sources highlight a really beautiful symbol. A single violet springing from the black ash. This represents raw, untamed, emerging life, totally unburdened by the past. So this isn't just an end. It's a brutal, necessary clearing of the board. The universe hit the hard reset button. And finally, Section 5, terrifying freedom to begin. Now we've reached the absolute aftermath, where the survivors are left totally alone in the ashes of their former lives. The cages are gone, the Starfinder has already looked away to the next constellation. So, what happens now? Well, without a master or a king to dictate who they are, the people are suddenly burdened with the heavy, nihilistic weight of absolute freedom. They are completely stripped of their excuses. You can't blame your misery on your societal class or your massive debts anymore, because those things simply do not exist. But you also can't rely on them for your identity either. Finding true value is a monumental task. When all the comfortable, rigid illusions of the old world are gone, the reality of having to figure out your own worth from scratch is deeply, deeply intimidating. Because the universe provides zero meaning, humanity is forced into radical autonomy. It's this terrifying newfound freedom to decide your own worth from the ground up. This is really the ultimate philosophical payload of the fable. By walking away and offering absolutely no governance, the Starfinder forces the ultimate existential challenge onto these survivors. You're no longer defined by a master's law. You are now the absolute author of your own existence. And look, this radical autonomy is beautiful, but it carries a crushing weight. You have to invent your own purpose in a void that simply does not care if you exist. It's the ultimate call to rise above the ashes and create new meaning, entirely your own. It's very much like Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, creating their own values after the old world dies. Which leaves us with this profound, haunting question about our own golden cages. It challenges us to find true value when all our imaginary constructs finally burn away. The fable of the golden cage and the Starfinder isn't just some story about a fictional apocalypse. It's a lens for us to view our own lives. What imaginary values are you clinging to? What golden cages are currently restricting your potential? And if the Starfinder arrived today, leaving you with nothing but a desolate field of black ash and absolute freedom, what would you choose to build? Thanks for exploring this dark, magnificent fable with me.